What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best warrior warbringer build in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will show you a quick overview of the setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. This setup is a big AoE build which focuses on armor breaking offensively, and then the block defensively. Our main playstyle will revolve around using the Stampede skill, which will charge our character forwards and create patches of jagged ground, which then are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. By us using the Ancestral Warrior Totem skill with the Jagged Ground support gem, this will create now 2 patches of the jagged ground per each use, and will also be exploded by the Stampede. So we will be able to basically one-shot huge amount of grouped up enemies. Then also for leveling and mid-game we are going to be using a two-handed mace, and taking the anvil's weight and the imploding impacts for the first 2 ascensions. While then later, when we have enough strength, we will invest into the Giant's Blood Keystone, which will unlock the ability for us to use a two-handed weapon in just one hand, so then we can use a shield on our rough hand. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For main class we have chosen the warrior, and our ascendancy is the warbringer. And then for our basic skill we got the Mace Strike with support gems such as the Rage, Close Combat and Maim. Then second we got our most important skill, the Stampede, with support gems like the Momentum, Fist of War, Brutality and Stomping Ground. Then next we got the Leap Slam with Martial Tempo, Holy Descent and Culling Strike. Then next we have the Ancestral Warrior Totem with the Rolling Slam, Jagged Ground, Ancestral Urgency and Heavy Swing. Next we have the Scavenge Planting with the Vitality and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Hammer of the Gods with the Second Wind, Hourglass, Execute and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got the Seismic Cry with just one support gem, the Premeditation. And finally for the last one we got Attrition with no gems. Most of our build is structured around using the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up, but which happens rarely as we can basically spam it 24/7. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until we unlock the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem skills. So first off we have the Earthquake skill with support gems like the Lassacrate and the Fist of War. Then next we got the Shockwave with the Overabundance and the Bloodlust. Then next we also got Mace Strike with just the Rage gem. And finally we are using the Rolling Slam with the Martial Tempo. In the early stages of progression we are using the Earthquake and the Shockwave Totem as our main ability combo alongside the Mace Strike. The Earthquake will create a jagged ground which erupts for a larger hit after a duration, and the Shockwave Totem Slam will cause any jagged ground in its radius to explode, so you can force the Earthquake's aftershock to erupt sooner. Also, the Mace Strike is a free-to-use default attack option that will deal respectable single target damage in the early game, so try to use it as much as possible, especially in close range against the boss. Next we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. In extremely simple terms, every character is granted 1 passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more from completing certain quests. In general we have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and the keystones. All of them will act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the melee damage node and make our path like this until the brutal node. Then next we take smash and make our way to the singular purpose like this. Then now we go back and take relentless for early game recovery. And then from here we again go back to previously where we left off and keep going forwards, and then take the right path until we get to the resolute technique. Then now we go back where our paths split, and then we take the right side and make our way all the way to the Hail Heart. Also, while we are doing this, on our way we can grab the Spike Pit. And then from here, after you get your first ascension into the Anvil's Weight, then now you can begin filling out all the other armor break nodes and all the other nodes that you can see in this tree. And from here there's no specific priority that you should follow. And then finally, let's go back all the way to the middle again, and for our ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Anvil's Weight. then get Imploding Impacts, then now get the Renleech Training, and then for the last one take the Turtle Charm. To simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the Brutal, Smash and the Singular Purpose nodes, as this will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest, we wanted to invest into more recovery, more defense, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. In PoE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your skill points recklessly. You can of course refine your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you're following this setup, then make sure not to deviate from it, as some of my decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to definitely pay off later. So please use the exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier to follow the path. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forge Maul with the critical and speed. And this is not required, but you can also, if you want, get the extra stats like the added flat physical damage, increased percentage to the physical damage and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Elite Great Helm with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, max strength and cold resistance. Then for chest we have the Abyssal Cuirass with the armor, and for the extra stats we want to get max life, more strength and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Fine Belt with the Flash Gain for 0.2 charges per second. And for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength and cold resistance. Then for gloves we got the Advanced Tempered Mitts with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more armor, more to all attributes and cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the Expert Stone Greaves with armor, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, increased movement speed and the lightning resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength or just more resistances to all elements. While on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and the extra stats are max life, more to all attributes and more percentage to all elemental resistances. And then finally for the amulet we got the Ember Amulet with more strength, more max life and fire resistance. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. But remember that your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize flat added physical damage, percentage increased physical damage, and percentage increase to attack speed. Specifically, the physical damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize pure armor base types, and look for a combination of modifiers for life, resistances and strength. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. As far as getting gear goes, gearing up during the campaign is relatively straightforward. Most players will focus on increasing their damage output and survivability, and at this point there's no one best gear or specific item that you should farm, as the campaign is just a brief introduction to the game itself, and you will be getting better gear left and right. However, once you reach the early stages of mapping, which should happen around level 65, it's crucial that you start mainly focusing on farming Atlas of the Worlds, and just keep repeating maps until you reach tier 16. If you're looking for a gear guide on the best gear and how to farm it after the campaign, then watch my dedicated gearing guide video. Then on top of this, we need to quickly look into the charms. Charms are incredibly useful, as by having the right one equipped at the right time can save you from dying. If you are struggling with certain bosses, then look into what gem type they are using, and then use that specific charm to increase your resistance. For me personally, I like to use the Ruby charm for fire damage, then the Sapphire charm for cold damage, and then the Amethyst gem for chaos damage. But as I said, which one you choose will depend on the enemies that you are fighting, so feel free to experiment and mix and match. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So, we want to start our main rotation by using the Stampede, which will create patches of the jagged ground, which are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. Then after that we use the Ancestral Warrior Totem, which will create now 2 jagged grounds. And then finally we use the Rolling Slam, which will also explode the Stampede and do massive amounts of AoE damage. Then from here we can use the Leap Slam to reposition and get great recovery because of the Holy Descendant support gem. Then the Hammer of the Gods skill is our finisher for tankier targets, so use it when the boss is at or below 35% HP, so we could benefit from the Execute support gem. And by the way, if you don't have enough spirit to maintain the Scavenge Planting and the Attrition, then feel free to use the Scavenge Planting during the general gameplay and deactivate it to then activate the Attrition for only against bosses. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation and use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific fight. So let me know what you think about this setup in the comments below. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then you definitely don't want to miss out my previous build guide, where I showed you even more powerful builds and much more.